Halftime at the Caesars Superdome, the New Orleans Saints shutting out the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm telling you, Bob, never going to get that one right. Shutting out the Las Vegas Raiders 17-0 in the first half. Will Lutz misses a field goal right there at the end of the half. However, outside of that, Bob, it looks like the New Orleans Saints have taken some of our advice, ran the football well, kept it pretty vanilla on offense, but it's resulted to points, and the defense looks like that defense that they raved about throughout training camp this offseason. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the numbers. Andy Dalton, as you see on your screen, 15 of 21 for 142 and a score. The score coming from Alvin Kamara, who has 85 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Taysom Hill, 43 scrimmage yards. That includes the 2 passing yards. And, of course, how about Tyrann Mathieu with his second interception of the season? Great effort for the Honey Badger to get his first interception inside of the Superdome. Bob, your initial thoughts there on the first half?
Yeah, well, like we said in our pregame show, that we expected New Orleans, if they were going to have any success offensively, to have their game plan revolve around Alvin Kamara, both running and passing, and devise different packages for Taysom Hill. And like you said, Brendan, that's exactly what we saw in the first half. The Kamara in particular is getting a lot of his yards inside the guards. Which tells you that the Saints are winning the battle at the line of scrimmage on the offensive side. Now that they're going into the locker room with a couple score lead, they are able to keep with that game plan, in the second half. I'd like to see them get Chris Olave involved a little bit more, because Andy Dalton is getting. He's gotten a little bit of pressure, but nothing extravagant. So, like you said, I think they called a good game plan offensively. Defensively, Marcus Davenport especially has come to play. He and Pete Werner are all over the field. I'm happy to report that I am seeing some disruption from the Saints' interior defensive line, especially Kentavious Street. But David Onyemata had a couple pushes into the backfield early on. And what that's doing, that's not allowing Josh Jacobs to get ahead of steam as he hits the line of scrimmage. So it's important for the Saints' defensive line to keep doing that in the second half. They have Carr uncomfortable. I think they sacked him. Well, they sacked him twice, but once was called nullified because of that BS holding penalty on Paulson Adebo. So they're getting to Carr enough where they're making him feel uncomfortable. And the defensive play calling is good too. They're mixing up their coverages, so that way Carr isn't getting a free look at either Renfro or Adams, who, knock on wood, both of those guys were very quiet in the first half. The large majority of Carr's passing success has come to Foster Moreau underneath. So that tells you that the coverage down the field is also doing their job.
Speaking of that coverage, I want to get your thoughts here on Alontae Taylor, who, remember on draft night, a lot of people were really confused on why the Saints took a guy that high. But it seems like he's really found himself a role here in New Orleans, and going back to the draft, they did say during the draft process, they don't see this guy as a hybrid safety or nickel corner combo. They see him as an outside corner. He's locking down one of the best receivers in the league right now.
Yeah, he is, and I'm really impressed with Alontae Taylor, both last week and this week. Taylor was the only Saints defensive player to show up in Arizona, and the Raiders are testing him today, and so far he has responded, very, very well. And like you said, a lot of people I count myself in this. We're very surprised at the pick, but I immediately understood why as soon as I had a chance to watch film on Alontae Taylor. He's a very physical cornerback, but he's also extremely athletic. Very intelligent in man coverage. A lot of fluid athleticism. And I like the way and a Debo too, but I like the way Alontae Taylor is holding up in coverage thus far this first half.
3 targets on the day for Adams, no receptions. First time since 2017 he was held without a reception in the first half. That tells you all you need to know about how great Adams has been thus far in his NFL career. I want to talk about this man a little bit more. Alvin Kamara, who was the man who stepped up, a quiet leader for the Saints, but stepped up and had the locker room pep talk, if you will, or the come to Jesus meeting after that loss against Arizona. He's came to play. He's got 85 scrimmage yards. He's got 2 touchdowns. His first touchdown of the season, Bob, and he's knocking on the door of some Saints records in terms of touchdowns as well. What have you seen out of Alvin that you've liked?
He's running with a lot of authority. And as a receiver, I love what they're doing with him. They're moving him around like Sean Payton used to do with him. The Raiders' best coverage linebacker is Divine Diablo. And I said in an article leading up to the game that I thought Kamara would be heavily involved as a receiver, and he is. But to do so successfully, they would have to run Alvin away from Diablo. When Alvin's coming out of the backfield on those option routes, he's watching to see which side Diablo favors, and we've seen Kamara break inside of Diablo's inside shoulder a lot of times for those those receptions over the middle. Now that's the territory of Denzel Perryman, who's a heavy hitter, but a downhill linebacker, not real strong in coverage. Then on the other side, they've had success with Kamara out of the backfield because Blake Martinez, he's another downhill guy, very smart in zone coverage, but Blake Martinez is just not going to be able to stay with Alvin Kamara man on man out of the backfield. And like I said, as a rusher, he is running with a ton of authority, like he has something to prove.
Well, and keep this in mind moving forward. Mark Ingram back in the locker room early with some knee discomfort. He had 1 carry on the first drive. I believe he had all 3 snaps on the first drive. We didn't see Kamara on the opening drive, but nonetheless, Mark Ingram questionable to return with a knee injury. But we even said it in the pregame, Bob. You're going to see a lot of Kamara, and the complement to Kamara now is no longer Mark Ingram, but rather Taysom Hill. Well, before we wrap up, Bob, Saints have a lot of things going right for them in the first half. You can surely tell by the scoreboard. What do the Saints need to do to make sure they close it out and get the victory at home today?
Yeah, I hate to be negative, but that missed field goal by Lutz at the end of the first half, it felt like it's going to hurt. I think the Saints have to come out offensively and put some points on the board, even if it's just a field goal, and make it a 3-score game, or widen their lead a little bit. Offensively, you need to keep the Raiders off balance. Continue to keep the Raiders off balance with your play calling, your usage of Kamara and Hill. Do not be surprised to see Olave a lot more involved. On some play action passes. Defensively, you got to keep winning your battles at the line of scrimmage. Davenport especially, Contavious Street is getting some nice push. Pete Warner, salute to you, man. I mean, you are playing like your hair is on fire. The entire defense really is, like you said at the onset of the show, Brendan. This is the Saints defensive unit that we expected to see to open the season. So they're playing like a real motivated bunch. You got to keep that motivation at a high level, because the Raiders aren't going to go away easily.
Absolutely. Chris Olave, 4 targets today, 2 receptions for 22 yards. Alvin Kamara is the Saints' leading receiver. Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara both at 30 yards on the ground. They are tied for your leading rushers. Andy Dalton, 142 yards through the air. And the sack of the day thus far for New Orleans is going to Mr. Demario Davis. And, of course, the interception to Tyrann Mathieu. Bob, real quick, final score predictions after the first half.
I think I capped off our pregame show by saying 27-24. I'm now going to up that a little bit. I'm going to say 30-17, New Orleans.
I had the Saints 31-28 in the pregame. Knock on wood, I don't see the Raiders coming out and scoring 28 in the second half, but I do see the Saints getting up to 30. And my wild prediction for the day, Kevin White, touchdown for New Orleans. I've been saying that for a couple years now, it seems like, but it's going to happen today, Bob. You keep saying it's going to happen. Eventually, you're going to be right. Well, guys, we appreciate you tuning in to the Bayou Blitz halftime show. We will be back on Wednesday for the Bayou Blitz podcast. Bob, real quick, where can people follow you?
Folks, follow me on Facebook, Bob Rose. I'm over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. Brendan mentioned our Bayou Blitz podcast. Make sure you tune into that on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. In the meantime, all of our articles can be pulled up and read through the Saints News Network and at Saints News on Twitter.
For myself, Twitter, Instagram at BT Boylan. Until Wednesday, hope you guys enjoy the remainder of the ball game. We'll see you guys then. Remember, find peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you on Wednesday. Bayou Blitz family.